It stood alone, just outside the town of Union, Missouri, a crooked house at the edge of a gravel road that didn't lead anywhere else. You wouldn't find it unless you were looking for it, and even then it seemed to look back first. The townspeople called it the Screaming House, though no one knows who said it first. Long before it ever screamed, it was just a place people didn't mention. The kind of house that makes the trees grow sideways, that keeps the wind still, even when the clouds roll low and fast. Built in 1906 by a stone mason named Samuel Archer, it was meant to be his retirement, his final work, a legacy of limestone and pine, drawn by hand and measured with pride. But Archer died just weeks before the final beam was placed, collapsed in the upstairs hallway without a sound. They say he was holding a nail in his mouth when he died. It was never found. After that, the house became borrowed, never sold, never cherished, just passed along like a bad memory. No one stayed long. A newlywed couple in 1911 moved out before Christmas. A single mother in 1915 claimed the windows, whistled at her at night. She boarded them shut. The boards were gone by morning. No one reported crimes. No police were called. Just a quiet, rotating line of renters who left with their mouths sealed and their lights still on. But it was in 1932 when the town truly began to shiver. The Carver family arrived in spring. Marcus Carver, his wife Elaine, and their two boys, Thomas, age 9, and Sam, only 6. Sam did not speak, never had, not even at birth. Doctors called it selective mutism. Elaine called it a gift of quiet. They moved into the house with very little: 2 trunks, a piano, a box of black and white photos. Elaine hung lace curtains on every window that same afternoon. By dusk, the lace had yellowed. No one could say why. Neighbors first noticed the silence. Not the peaceful kind. More like the way an attic feels when you're the only one home. The Carvers rarely left the house. The boys didn't play in town. And when Marcus did come into the general store, he bought in strange patterns. 1 week, only canned peaches. Another, a sack of nails and nothing else. He always paid in cash. His eyes always looked just behind your shoulder. Then came the noises. It started with the wind, or the lack of it. On stormy nights when trees snapped in the woods and dust kicked up on every porch in Union, the Carver house stayed still. Its chimney never whistled. Its shutters never shook. Not once did a branch scrape the glass. It was like the house was inside something, like it had wrapped itself in stillness, like it did not want to be known by the weather. But the stillness made the other noises louder. The neighbors said they heard cries. Not shouting, not animal sounds, just long, slow wails, like someone calling for help down a well. Sometimes they rose in pitch. Sometimes they stopped all at once, like a door slamming shut in the air. When one man, Mr. Donovan, tried to follow the sound with a lantern, it vanished behind him instead. He never spoke of it again. Inside the house, things were no better. Elaine Carver was seen sweeping the porch at midnight. Not angrily, not sleepwalking, just sweeping, as if trying to erase something only she could see. Sam, the mute boy, wandered the yard barefoot, no matter the season. When asked why, Elaine answered with a voice like dried paper. He doesn't like how the ground talks to him when he wears shoes. She said it once. Never again. By the 3rd month, the Carvers were gone. No goodbye, no wagon, no fire sale. They left dishes in the sink and laundry still wet on the line. The front door was unlocked. Their piano had one broken key, C-sharp, wedged with something unidentifiable. A blackened feather. The gas stove was off but warm. A half-roasted chicken still sat inside, untouched. The sheriff walked through the house the following morning. He said the basement door had been nailed shut from the outside, with 6 long nails, all bent. The local priest entered the house only once. He emerged pale, clutching his rosary like a lifeline, and whispered, "They buried them in the wrong place." No one asked him what he meant. He left town within a week. Over time, the paint peeled in lines that resembled script. The upstairs window refused to stay closed, even after being bolted. And no one ever broke in, because no one ever wanted to. The house still stands. It is not haunted. It is not cursed. It simply remembers. And the wind still will not touch it. His name was Sam Carver, 6 years old. Didn't speak, not once, not even when he cried. The doctors called it trauma without origin. The teacher said he was intelligent, just distant. His mother claimed he had no use for language because he hears things without words. He spent most of his time with pencils, charcoal mostly, and paper. He never asked for them, just accepted them like someone fulfilling a quiet duty. It was after they moved into the house on Archer Road that the drawings changed. Before, it was barns, trees, birds. But after the first week in the screaming house, his pages darkened, circles, tunnels, sharp shapes that looked like open mouths. He drew the same thing over and over again, a long staircase that led underground, curling into the dark like a coiled bone. He never looked at what he drew, just stared ahead as his hands moved. Elaine, his mother, found one drawing beneath her pillow. It was damp, as if it had been buried before she found it. She didn't show her husband, but she did burn it in the stove. The next morning it was back. Same paper, same drawing, slightly altered. Now the stairs had a figure halfway down. Small, crouched, arms wrapped around its knees. Elaine wept without sound. She took Sam to the priest, who asked to see the boy's sketches. After 3 pages, the priest set them down and stepped into another room. He returned with holy water and rubbed it into Sam's palms. Sam didn't resist. He only smiled gently, like he pitied the man. That was the last time the Carvers went to town. Over the next 2 weeks, Sam drew almost constantly. On walls, on bedsheets. He began using soot from the fireplace when his charcoal ran out. Always the same staircase, always deeper. Then one morning the drawing stopped. No more scribbles, no more circles, just silence. Elaine asked him why. Sam pointed toward the basement door and tapped once. Not hard, not playfully. With certainty. Marcus Carver nailed the basement shut the same day. 6 nails, bent backward when they came out. They left the house the next morning. But the sheriff who entered after they left, he found something in the cellar. A single page, nailed to the inside of the door. It was Sam's drawing, but this time the figure on the stairs wasn't sitting. It was standing, arms out, eyes hollow, waiting. His name was Mr. Wenton, retired postmaster, widowed, lived 3 doors down from the Carver house and had a habit of winding his clocks every morning at 7:03 sharp. Not 7, not 7:05, 7:03. He said it was the hour his wife died. And he wanted every clock in the house to tick in her memory. He was precise, tidy, and mostly ignored by the neighborhood kids, who thought he looked like a wax figure that had learned to smoke. But Mr. Wenton had one flaw: he watched. Not maliciously, not with gossip in mind. He just noticed. He saw things that others ignored. And in March of 1932, he began noticing the Carvers. Not when they were outside, not when they waved, but when the lights flickered on at the wrong times, 2:11 a.m., the 44 a.m., and when the basement light, which hadn't worked in years, began to glow faintly beneath the floorboards. He heard music once, faint piano keys, a lullaby almost, but the notes were wrong. One always bent like a tooth chipped at the edge. He tried to sleep through it, but on April 2nd his clock stopped. All of them, at once, every room, frozen at 3:17 a.m. He rewound them, reset them, replaced one with a new timepiece. But the next morning they'd stopped again, same time, 31:17. After the 3rd night, he stopped trying. He simply sat in his hallway chair and waited for the minute hand to freeze. And it did. But that night, he heard something else. 3 slow knocks against the wall that separated his house from the Carvers, followed by silence, followed by something breathing. Not heavy, not fast, just breathing, long enough for him to count between each inhale. He never called the police, but he did write in his journal. 6 pages of scrawled ink. The last entry read, "If the clocks know, it means time is keeping score." 2 days later, he vanished. His house was untouched, his chair still warm. The only oddity was his hallway wall. A square section, about the size of a man's chest, was warped inward, bent, like something had leaned from the other side. No trace of Wenton was found, but weeks later, a scrap of paper appeared on the Carver lawn. It was part of a watch face, frozen at 3:17. They were found in a shoebox, tucked inside the attic of the Carver house, beneath a broken rafter and 2 inches of dust. No one remembered leaving them there. The sheriff who entered the home after the Carvers left said he hadn't seen them during his first walkthrough, but now somehow they sat perfectly placed as if waiting. The box was wrapped in wax paper, tied with a string that had no knots, just threaded, over and under, as if it didn't want to be opened, only noticed. Inside, photographs, old ones, black and white. Each photo was slightly curled at the edges, like they'd been warm once, and all of them featured the house. Not from the outside, not like a family might take, but from angles no one should have been able to shoot. Inside the basement, deep beneath the floor and from above the staircase looking down, as if the camera had been suspended mid-air. The photos were dated, but the dates made no sense. One read 1898, 8 years before the house was built. Another read 1965, over 30 years in the future. But the house in each photo looked exactly the same. Dark windows, slanted roof, the faint outline of something watching from the glass. In one photo, the upstairs window showed a silhouette, not sharp, just the shape of a woman's head turned slightly, hair in curls. The next photo, same angle, showed no head, but now there were hands, pressed to the glass. Small, childlike. In the final photograph, the camera had moved outside, angled from behind a bush. The front door was cracked open. Inside, nothing but blackness. But if you looked closely, you could see the faintest suggestion of a mouth, wide and smiling, far too low to belong to a person standing upright. The negatives were never found. The sheriff took the box home that night. By morning, his wife reported him missing. The box was on their kitchen table, every photo blank, every surface scrubbed clean. But upstairs, in the hallway, there was a single new photograph nailed to the wall. It showed the sheriff asleep in his bed, taken from above. No one knows who took it. The window was locked from the inside. The house had no attic access, and no one ever entered again. They called it a pantry. At least that's what the blueprints claimed. A narrow space beneath the staircase, meant for dry goods, shelves, maybe a broom. But no one ever used it, not in all the years the house stood. And not because it was locked, because it wasn't supposed to be there. The Carvers never opened it. The sheriff never mentioned it. But in 1971, when the Harper family moved in briefly, the eldest daughter found the door by accident. She was chasing her cat, who had slipped beneath the stairs. She followed it with a flashlight, expecting dust and webs. What she found instead was a wooden door with iron hinges. Flush with the wall, no knob. Just a thin vertical slit and something carved beside it. Letters, scratched deep like fingernails. They weren't words, just markings, symbols, the kind you see in old books, or in dreams you don't talk about. She called her father. He tried to pry the door open with a screwdriver. It didn't move. Not even a splinter. He joked that it must have been sealed shut since the foundation was laid. But that night the door was ajar, not wide, just enough to see darkness beyond it. Not shadow, darkness, thick and silent, as if the room behind it wasn't empty, but unmade. The cat wouldn't go near it again. Neither would the daughter. But over the next week, the rest of the family began hearing things. First the tapping, soft, rhythmic, like someone drumming fingertips against hollow wood. Then whispers, never from the same direction, never quite words, but always just close enough to feel behind the ears. The father tried to seal the door with plywood and nails. In the morning, the nails were bent outward. The plywood cracked straight down the middle, and the door, still ajar. On the 8th day, the youngest son disappeared. He was 5. They found him standing at the edge of the basement stairs, barefoot, eyes closed. When asked what he was doing, he simply said, "She said I could come in now." They left that night. The house remained. Years later, a construction crew removed part of the wall beneath the staircase. No door, no markings. Nothing but plaster and brick. But one of the workers, new to town, unaware of the stories, asked the others if the house had a second pantry. "Why?" they asked. He held up his phone. On the screen, a photo he'd taken minutes earlier. It showed a wooden door with no knob, half open, and something just behind it, looking back. It was never supposed to have power. The house hadn't been connected to the town grid since 1956. After a transformer blew out and the mayor refused to have the lines reconnected. Too many outages, too many complaints, so the property sat cold. But then came the lights, pale, weak, flickering, seen only from the road, by those who refused to go further. In 1984, a young man named Curtis Lane made the mistake of stepping onto the property after midnight, dared by friends. He was 19. Thought he was braver than most, said he didn't believe in haunted places, only broken people. He brought a flashlight, a pocket knife, and a cassette recorder. Said he wanted to capture the nothing for himself. He walked into the house at 12:03, and by 12:08, the lights were on. All of them, not bright, but visible. A pale blue glow from every window, even the boarded ones. His friends called his name from the road. Got no answer. After 10 minutes, the front door slammed shut. No one touched it. And then silence. No flickers, no motion. Just darkness, absolute and waiting. They didn't call the police. Not at first, they ran. But the cassette recorder was found 2 days later in the ditch beside the mailbox. The tape inside had melted, warped in swirls that resembled fingerprints. The audio was mostly static. But near the end, there was a sound, 3 notes, played slowly on what might have been a piano, followed by breathing, long, shaky, then a whisper. It remembers his name. Curtis Lane was never found. His car remained in the gravel, his shoes by the porch. Years later, a woman walking her dog near the property stopped dead when the lights came on again. No one had entered. No footsteps, no wind. But the glow pulsed once, twice, then went black. The woman didn't speak for 3 months. When she finally did, she only said one thing. The house knows when it's being watched. She never walked that way again. The house never seemed to decay. The wood should have rotted. The roof should have caved. But even after decades of weather and silence, it stood untouched, as if it refused to collapse. As if something inside was still holding it upright. In 1996, a man named Everett Poe, a land appraiser, was hired by the county to assess abandoned lots on the outskirts of Union. He'd never heard of the house. No records showed it existed. It wasn't on any official map. But when he asked a local where to begin his survey, the man pointed toward the woods and said, "You'll know it when it stops feeling like daylight." Poe walked the path alone, carried a clipboard, camera, thermos of coffee. He logged soil samples, checked fence lines. But when he reached the property, something shifted. His watch slowed, lost 6 minutes in what should have been a 10-step walk. He noted it but didn't panic. Took a photo of the porch, then another. Then one of the upstairs window where, for just a second, he swore someone had pulled back a curtain. He called out, no answer. But something thudded softly inside. A single sound, like a heavy book, dropped onto wooden floorboards. He left the porch without entering. Drove straight to his office. Developed the photos. All of them came out black except one. The last, the upstairs window. It showed a figure. Blurred, out of proportion. Too tall for the frame. One hand against the glass. No face. Just a smudge where eyes should have been. And a line across the mouth like stitches. He returned to the house the next morning. But the window was shattered. From the inside, on the glass shard near the sill, he found a single word scratched faintly into the surface. Still. That night he dreamed of the hallway, the staircase, the door that wasn't there, and the sound of footsteps that paused when he held his breath. He never returned, but months later he left a note for the office secretary. No name. Just a message scrawled in pencil. If it never dies, how long has it been awake? They say children see what adults won't, that their eyes aren't trained to ignore the impossible. In 2003, a substitute teacher named Ms. Helen Rudd was assigned to Union Elementary, 3rd grade, quiet class. One student stood out, a boy named Jacob, pale, small for his age, always drawing. His desk was covered in graphite dust and torn pages. He didn't talk much, but he always asked the same question when art time came. "Can I draw the old house again?" Ms. Rudd thought nothing of it at first. Kids fixate. But Jacob's drawings weren't of a fairy tale house. They were detailed. Too detailed. Angles, floorboards, cracks along the ceiling. He shaded light fixtures and doorknobs, and in every one of his drawings, there was a shape, usually behind a door or crouched in the corners. A shape with arms too long and a head slightly bent to one side, as if it had been hung once and didn't quite reset. One day Ms. Rudd asked him where the house was. Jacob didn't look up. He just said, "It watches the back of the school." She checked. Behind the school was only woods. But deeper in, past the trees, sat a clearing. And in that clearing, a house. Boards nailed wrong, windows gaping, no path to it, but the grass grew away from it like it was pushing the ground back. That night she stayed late. Graded papers. The janitor had left. The sun dipped low. From her window she saw a flicker, soft light in the woods. She stepped out only for a moment. But when she returned, Jacob's folder was open on her desk. And on the top page was a new drawing. Not the house this time. It was her, sitting at her desk. Lights off, something behind her, reaching. She left Union the next week. No explanation. But her final act was to submit a note to the school board. Just 3 words typed in bold, "Tear it down." But no one knew what she meant. Because as far as records showed, there was no structure behind Union Elementary. No building, no foundation, Nothing at all. They never demolished the house. It still stands, though no map will show it. You can't buy it. You can't sell it. You can only know of it, and once you do, it waits. The screams have stopped, or maybe they never came from mouths at all. Maybe they were memories too loud to stay buried. In 2021, a documentarian from St. Louis tried to make a film about the property. He came with drones, cameras, microphones, all the tools of reason. He stayed 3 nights. On the 4th, his equipment was found stacked neatly outside his tent. Batteries removed, lenses intact, memory cards wiped clean. All except one. A single clip, 15 seconds long. It shows the house at dusk, silent, still, and then one upstairs window shifts. Not opens, not breaks. It simply bends inward, like glass exhaling. And a hand, bare, slender, pale as dust, presses flat against it. Just for a moment, then gone. No credits were ever added. The film was never made, but the footage appeared online weeks later, posted by an anonymous account with no history, no name, no subscribers. The caption read only, "It wants to be seen." The house doesn't hunt. It waits, it lingers. And those who find it, through whispers, through drawings, through dreams, don't forget it. Because forgetting would mean it never happened. And the house cannot allow that. It holds time. It holds breath. It holds every name ever whispered inside it, and repeats them when no one is listening. If you ask around Union, Missouri, you'll find no answers. Just eyes that look away. Just streets that curve before you reach the woods. Just silence. But if you find the house and it sees you, you'll know. Because the moment your foot touches its porch, the air will fall still. Your watch will pause. The trees will lean back. And a voice, not loud but close, will ask you one thing. Softly, sweetly, inside your own head. Do you remember me? Thank you for listening. This story was whispered by Sanctified Secrets, where the forgotten are never truly gone.